Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome to another session of our Day 1 and Beyond series. These series take you through various topics and activities related to building out on Oracle Cloud. Our topic for today, as you see on the screen, is security, where we'll talk about technology, principles, services, recommendations, and best practices to improve the security posture of your environments. Before diving into that, we would like to have a quick poll on the screen, Michael, if you'll have, yeah, there you go. So this poll is to get an understanding of everyone's level of experience with cloud. And this helps us in customizing our content for the upcoming session. So really appreciate if you could take a second to respond. This session is being recorded and you'll be able to find the recordings on Cloud Customer Connect. You can also find the recordings and slide deck PDFs of our previous sessions there. I'm Renu Bhatt, TPM with the Customer Enablement team. And today I'm joined by Anand Prasad, Cloud Architect, and Lynn Lewis, Senior Cloud Engineer, as the main presenters. And joining us as an expert today is Jason Cook, Master Principal Cloud Architect here at Oracle. He seems to have become the resident expert for our sessions now. So like always, a quick reminder to use the Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen for any questions throughout the session. And with that, hope you all enjoy the session. I'll hand it over to Anand.
Thank you, Renu. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here and to talk about Oracle security. So as Renu mentioned, right, hopefully you're all very excited about what Oracle can offer. And I'm going to spend a little more than 20 minutes talking about first part of the security session is what the security tools we provide you for you to take advantage to manage your security landscape of things. I'm particularly going into the security in the cloud and security off the cloud, right? As you can see on the screen, what are the tools on the IA, identity and access management? How do you detect, whether it is threat detection, form and data protection side of the fence, and how do you respond back to the attacks, okay? And my colleague Lynn is going to cover about a tool called Cloud Guard. He's going to showcase a demo on that so you can take advantage of how do you protect your assets. With that, one of the key things which we want to showcase is the breadth and the landscape of things we have at Oracle, okay? As you can see from the screen, we have a complete offering from an OCI standpoint of view, whether it's a developer services, whether you want to go into AI, ML side of the fence, and also in this topic and the security side of the zone, how do you provide the capabilities for you to manage the security, not only for your own particular data center, but with other for access to the other partners, managed services, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Oracle's theme of security is very, very simple, right? It's always on. When I say always on, we think security from the ground up. We have inbuilt security into every of our services and into the platform. So it's always on. Security posturing, what I call it, is to reduce the attack perimeter, right? When I say reduce the attack perimeter, today you can see in the modern day, everybody is moving to cloud and there's a lot of attacks happening, to the companies. And then how do you protect your attack perimeter? Because cloud, there is no zone or there is no area which you can protect. It is everywhere, right? So that leads to one of the things which I want to bring in my resident expert in a later slide, but we provide you the security posturing is always on. And we also make it very, very simple for you to define your security. It's very prescriptive, okay? And the other thing which I want to highlight here is it integrated across the stack. It's not something disjointed, it is integrated. Everything is built on the platform and security is built into the platform. So any services running on the platform is integrated and it comes with no cost for you to eliminate some of the key things that you can take advantage of it, okay? Now, if you're an on-prem customer and you've been with on-prem for a long time, there's a little bit change in the roles we play on the cloud side of the fence, right? As you can migrate your journey to cloud, the hats you wear in the cloud, it's a joint partnership, okay? I want to say this, whether it's OCI, any of the cloud vendor which you use it, it's a joint partnership. And depending upon the type of service you use, whether it's IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS, you have a role to play from a security and compliance perspective, right? For an IaaS side, you can choose your own OS, applications, data, as well as the user identity. If you move to the far right, like, from the SaaS perspective, you can only choose the data and the user identity, and the rest of them is provided by the completely a black box to you from a SaaS provider, in this case, OCI. Okay, so the responsibilities differ from an on-prem side of the fence to the cloud side of the fence. Before I jump into the next slide, right? I know that many of you are working with a lot of different industries across the spectrum here. Like, you are like, some of the industries are very, very critical on the compliance with certain things. We do offer a lot of like certifications and compliance across the industry spectrum, whether it is government industry, whether it is finance industry, whether it's healthcare. You can see on the screen, I don't want to go into each one of them, NIST, like, HIPAA, like some of them, like, and if you're based in like, North America, like, some of the things like, if you're in a pharmaceutical industry, you're very, very critical on the certain section of the compliance, and we do offer all of them. Okay. Now you can take a look at it in whichever the industry you're in, and then you can see that we have something in, or if you're in a federal based, we do have support FedRAMP as well. Now I want to bring in, I talked about a little bit on the previously, like, security is there in everybody's mind, in every organization. And it is like, it's the most like, discussed topic in recent days, right? Like, you can see the companies getting hacked and all those things. Now I want to bring in our expert, Jason, and ask him one question before I go into the next slide, right? Jason, like, as the cloud becomes a norm, like, most companies are moving to cloud today, and then it becomes a norm. Already it is a norm, but I think it will be a norm in next 3 to 5 years. The attacks on company assets have increased tremendously. Again, we keep hearing in all the newspapers as well as the social media. Companies are moving into something called a zero trust, right? To make sure they can protect their assets and everything. Can you comment on how does Oracle provides the capabilities for companies to manage and implement zero trust?
Yeah, thanks, Anand. That's a good question. More than 80% of all the attacks that customers see, oftentimes they're going to involve their credential use or misuse across the network. So, protecting credentials is definitely one of the most critical things you can do as you're looking at how can I secure my workloads and my data? How can I start applying some of the concepts of the zero trust policy model? But let me give you a couple examples that I've encountered as I work with customers and things that my customers have been interested in. First example I ran into a few months back, customer wanted to know how they could limit their deployment access pipelines to only run from networks they trust. Now, if you're familiar with the deployment pipeline, it's the thing that's going to allow you to deploy your servers, your networks, your security, your storage, your databases, and it's going to automate the deployment of those resources so that you don't have to do it manually. And oftentimes these pipelines have credentials that pretty much have access to everything, right? They're oftentimes near root level of access because they got to deploy across your entire environment. And so these types of credentials are very important for you to secure, because if anybody got access to them, they could certainly create whatever they wanted. And probably they could also delete what they wanted as well for a lot of the pipeline accounts. And so what the customer's trying to tackle as part of that zero trust policy was, how can they implement some sort of risk-based conditional access on their pipeline account, right? So within our IAM service, we recently introduced this new concept called network sources, where as a customer, you can define IPs and CIDRs as a parameter to use in your policies. So the customer is able to use something like these network sources to say, look, my ultra powerful pipeline account will have access to deploy resources across my whole environment, but only when it comes from my corporate network, right? So if the credentials ever got lost or compromised and someone tried to use them from a network that wasn't the corporate network or a specific IP address they trust, all the API calls would fail, and bad guys wouldn't be able to, spin up resources or delete what you have, right? The second one I ran into a few weeks back is, customers said, I want to be able to provide access to my containerized environment for resources that scale up, then scale down, and I don't want to have to manage the credentials so that those resources can write audit logs to a secure place for storage. And the challenge was, again, these resources were constantly coming up and down. They were constantly making changes to them, and they didn't want to have to go out and retroactively fix these resources that they scaled out. And again, within our IAM services, you can use things like dynamic groups to provide access to resources that scale up and down without having to manually specify them, right? And you think about this as, as a user, when you get access, there's someone that's going to take your user account and it's going to put it into a group and is going to remove it when you no longer need access. It's very manual, right? And oftentimes we've got to go through and fix those after a period of time when the groups have gotten clogged up. With dynamic groups, you apply them with parameters, right? I want all of my compute instances or all of my containers with a specific tag. Maybe the tag is secure logging, right? Whenever one of those spins up and it has this tag, the dynamic group automatically gives that resource access to storage so you can write logs, right? And this kind of follows the zero trust policy of being able to have rapid and scalable dynamic policies that meet whatever your organization's deployment model is, right? That's key so that you're not having to manually do this type of work. And that's what I've seen a lot of customers do to try to start to chip away at that zero trust model here lately.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that that discussion. But I think we will talk about zero trust and also how you protect the data in the coming slides. I think I'll bring in Jason on the data side of the fence. So now, what Jason was talking about, I want to talk about some of the capabilities which Oracle provides you from a tooling perspective. Like, Jason spent a lot of time on talking about identity and access management. Like, from a data perspective, we'll talk about a lot more in the coming slides. Oracle provides you the capabilities for you to protect your data at rest, data in transit, as well as we provide you the industry best practices in the data vault, and then also on the compute side of the fence. Now, I want to cover on the last three portion of it very quickly. Like, from a networking perspective, right? You really need network segmentation to implement zero trust, right? Network segmentation is very key. So you reduce the attack perimeter from an external world, right? So network segmentation, what are the tools we provide you to quickly create your network segmentation? You do not want to have a flat network, right? And then by default, we provide the best practices. If you create anything, create a private subnet so that it's completely locked down. It's only available for your people to come in and nothing is exposed to the external world. On the monitoring and prevention perspective, right, we do provide the tooling for you to monitor so that you can be very proactive rather than be a reactive type of scenario, so that we do provide you vulnerability scanning. And if you are using any third-party vulnerability tools, we do integrate with them. And as well as logging and log aggregation, we do provide those things. But if you are using something like industry standard, like, leading like Datadog or Splunk, we do provide the integration with those tools. Okay. Last but the least, the internet at edge, like, with this high intensity, if your company is doing a lot of website transactions and you want to protect at edge, we do provide a lot of things for DDoS attacks and then SQL injection attacks with the web application firewall, and so on. Okay. Now, one of the key differentiating, again, from a zero trust model is to make sure you segment your resources, like, type of resources which you are deploying, right? I would like to, give a lot of developers freedom to go and, innovate themselves, and those resources probably in a sandbox type of environment or a lab environment, and you want to isolate them to a production resources where you don't want to have, you want to monitor them, keystroke them, log the keystrokes and all those things. Oracle provides you some of a unique capability called compartments. Like, the compartments is nothing but a logical grouping of resources. It's nothing but a audio resources, and you can provide security policies on a compartment, who has an access to what, which I'm going to dive into a little later in the conversation. So compartment is unique to the OCI. Okay. Now, as you can see on the screen, we have divided the compartment structure into a typical organization structure in any company: marketing, finance, IT/information services. Nowadays, I think most companies are renaming their IT terminologies to information services, because every company is becoming a service-based organizations. Now, I want to double click on that information services landscape. And usually in the information landscape, the typical example which I'm showcasing you is there is a group called enterprise applications, information security, where CISO comes into the picture. The shared services group and infrastructure group, where the fundamental core deployment is done. Now I'm going to zoom in. As you can see on the screen right now, I deploy the resources in the infrastructure compartment. Okay. Now the compartment structure can go up to, think about this as a Windows folder. You can go 6 levels down. Okay. And you can write the policies on each folder, who has an access to what. And that's the fundamental key differentiator in Oracle is, If you are a customer who are servicing other customers, you can create a top level folder for your customers. And under the top level folder, each customer can have their own organizational structure. Or if you are a product-based company, which are building a lot of these products, you can create a project name, and then you can create the folder called dev test prod, so that you can create the compartments and structures and having different access privileges on each of them. Okay. Now, identity and access management is the core to security offering. Okay. Now, one of the things OCI provides you is in a very simple language, who has an access to what. Okay. Now, if you can see on this one, we highly encourage everything you want to provide an access, you create a group, add the users to the group, okay, and then write the policies on the compartments, which I talked about, right? And every resource exists inside the compartment, whether it's compute, database, every resource is deployed inside the compartment, okay? Now, policies is, as I talked about in the first slide, it's a very prescriptive, very easy to define it so that you can provide access to your team members. Now, here is a simple, quick sample on the policies, right? I'm showcasing here a sample here is a group called Group A to manage compute in the compartment A. Zoom in on the word manage, okay? This is the key verb, which is we have to use it in writing the policies, and there are 4 verbs we use it in OCI: manage, inspect, use, and so on. Okay. Now, if you see this, the second one is just as an inspect. It has got a different privileges, right? So I want to show you that syntax here. So if you look at it, read, inspect, use, and manage, the order of increasing the privileges goes from top down, like inspect as a least privilege, the read gets the next one, use gets a little bit more, and manage has everything else, okay? Now, we understand that every security is based on least privileged access, okay? We don't want you to provide across the all families in OCI. And there is different people have different role, right? Like if I'm a cloud admin, I only work on the system side of the fence. If I'm a network admin, I'm designing the networks. If you're a database admin, you're working with database. So you can provide this access to a particular family, okay? So as you can see on the top, right? Allow DBA group to manage object family in the project A, and you can provide the where conditions also, okay? Now, other thing which identity and access management from an Oracle perspective, we do understand you have a capabilities like an identity store. You might have an existing identity store called Active Directory, or you might use other identity stores. We do integrate with them as long as they support SAML 2.0, and we have an Active Directory, which is the industry leading identity store. We do provide an Active Directory bridge as well, okay? Now, in terms of if you want to other types of single sign-on products, we do support with integration with Okta, and then also multi-factor with other capabilities like DO, et cetera, okay? Now, from a data protection perspective, data is everywhere, right? You can see that every company is now generating data in 10 to 100x volumes than they used to do it 10 years back. How do you protect the data, whether it is attached to your compute instance, which is a block storage, whether it's a attached storage called file storage, or it is an object storage, and last but the least, a database. Oracle is the industry leading offering as the database, right? We do provide encryption at rest. I'm going to talk about data safe and data vault in next slides. But what I'm generally saying in quite summary is, we do offer the state-of-the-art, industry-leading best practices, tooling, and capabilities for you to protect your data. Encryption at rest, encryption in transit, and you can bring your own keys to manage this encryptions. Now, before I go into the vault side of the fence, I want to bring in, as I said, right, in a zero trust model, data is also very, very key, right? I want to bring in Jason, who has also worked in many, many industry verticals. I want to ask him, in today's world, how does data is managed in a company? Jason, I know that, I've been talking about data is everywhere in every company right now. How are customers preparing to protect their data, and what are the capabilities Oracle provides?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? Earlier we talked about credentials are the easiest way for bad actors to get into our environment. But oftentimes what they're going to be trying to get at is your data, especially if you've got something that's highly confidential. And within OCI, we've got multiple services that, of course, take care of identity and access and being able to filter and audit and provide you, visibility to what's going on there. But we've also got several services that allow you to do simple things, obvious things like how do I encrypt my data? How do I manage my own keys? We've got services that dig into what kind of data do I have in my databases and how do I manage my entire fleet and where my sensitive data is? And tools that look at basic configuration. Do I have anything like object storage that's open wide to the internet? I think most of us has probably seen some sort of incident where company did not secure their object storage and unfortunately, had customer data that's leaked out to the internet. In the next couple of slides, I can talk about a few of those services that we leverage with our customers to help you protect your data. But the three I'm going to talk about is definitely not an exclusive list of everything that we possibly have, just three that I commonly see. Thanks, Anand. You got me queued up here. With our vaulting service, it's basically a managed service to allow you to essentially manage your encryption keys and your secrets and your credentials, right? I think most of us have probably come along somewhere in our job where we've seen passwords and keys in an unencrypted state. If you're a developer, you've probably seen API keys, just plain text in your code. If you're a server admin, I'm sure you've probably come across someone that put, credentials sitting in a plain text, TXT file. And if you haven't done that, all of us have got probably a sticky note or someone in our family put a sticky note in the back of their keyboard for, password or something they should have. Vault allows us to have a logical container where we can store keys, and keys are nothing more than just the crypto material so that we can encrypt data, for block storage or object storage. Right. So for example, if you wanted to have a server that was encrypted and you wanted to bring your own key to encrypt that storage, you would put the key in vault, right? You put that crypto material in the vault, right? Secrets are nothing more than maybe your API keys, your database password, or your certificates, right? And so with secrets, that's the way that if you need to have some sort of API key access, you wouldn't put it in your code. You'd put the secret in, the vault, and through your code, you would call the vault. So the vault is where you want to keep your secrets. It's where you want to keep your crypto stuff. It allows you to rotate. It gives you visibility to what's going on. And if there's any kind of compromise, it allows you to version, ones that you don't trust out anymore and replace them with a new one. Okay. Nan, give me another slide. All right, data safe. Data safe is both a dashboard and a set of tools that allows you to protect sensitive data across your fleet of Oracle database servers, right? And those database servers could be those you're going to host with us in OCI. They could be databases that you have on premise. They could be even databases sitting over in Azure. And as long as they're Oracle databases, DataSafe is that tool that's going to give you visibility into what's going on there. Now, it gives you a couple features in DataSafe to help you protect your data. It's going to access your database security, right? Think weak passwords, overly permissive access. And if you're just following database best practices, it's going to allow you to look at your users. Do you have any dormant accounts? Maybe Bob rolled off the team 2 years ago, but Bob still has admin access and nobody came across it. It's going to find accounts that maybe have like system level control, overly permissive type. It's going to audit, if you have 500 failed, logons in the past hour, you probably want to know that. You want something to tell you there, maybe an application team misconfigured their secret, or you've got something malicious going on. It can alert out if you see something suspicious. And then for data, it's got 125 different predefined sensitive data types, right? Finding credit card information, social security number, home user addresses. And of course, if you got anything that's custom, you can customize it to find all the sensitive data across your databases. As you look at what you can do with masking, a lot of customers need to be able to upgrade their applications. They need to do database testing, and you want to make a copy or a clone of your database and that data. Masking is going to let you do that in a safe way. So you could, mask the data that's in production. You could create a clone down into a lower environment, and then you could do your testing in kind of the wild, wild west type environments without having to worry about playing with real customer data and how to secure that correctly. So masking is going to be, kind of valuable as kind of your overall testing strategy. Give me another slide, Anand.
Thank you, Jason. I think with that, we'll hand over to Lynn. I would like to bring on Lynn Lewis to cover the introduction to CloudGuard, and then I'll stop sharing. I think Lynn, while he's setting up, right? Lynn is going to talk about the second half of the presentation, where he's going to cover the CloudGuard and take you to the enticing demo on the Cloud Guard. I would love to see Lynn presenting that. Lynn, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Anand. You made it sound good to me. So we're going to talk about Cloud Guard and a couple other tools as well. So these are some of the templates, tools, methodologies that we give you to built on top of our standards to give you access to control more clearly what you could do. Every one of you that's capable of writing a subroutine in Java or Python could do this for yourselves, but we have done this for you and given you the ability to look at it this way. So the idea is something, essentially this is anomaly detection at one level or another. You have a set of scripts and they're set first as detectors and they detect something, and then you apply a function, a container containing specific code snippets that correct the problem, and it's applied to specific targets. It's nothing more than that, but it's nothing less than that either. So a couple more bits to talk about. First of all, it applies to specific targets, and this schematic is a view of the containers, right? So you have a parent container and a couple childs, parent, and here's another set of child over here, and you can push targets, and they can be different for different descendants in the structures that are used. So you're completely able to edit every aspect of this. So an example would be you'll detect a public instance, and I'll show you. It's a classic for us, right? A bucket that's been accidentally turned on to be public as opposed to private. You're going to restrict Tor logins. You're going to look at a public bucket I just mentioned, but also a public instance. So in a case where a virtual NIC what became public where it should not have been. And these are specific kinds of recipes that we're going to allow you to edit to make sure that you get exactly what you want. Once the problems are set in place, you determine how we're going to respond. And again, you can stop the instance, you can suspend the user, you can disable the bucket, whichever action you dictate in the response. It's simply a set of edits. And here's a classic example. You have a private bucket. Someone is trying to give perhaps a couple of objects in that bucket access to someone outside your organization. Completely legitimate, right? We do this all the time at Oracle. We have a bucket. We allow through a URL for folks to have access to it for a limited period of time. Sometimes people within our own organization will do that for a private bucket for ourselves, right? It's just a tool, a technique. But instead, accidentally, they make the bucket public. And of course, that would be identified as a critical issue if you hadn't told Cloud Guard that this was an area that you were concerned about and you wanted this to remain public. If you did that, then the configuration detector would know it, and it would give you a cloud event if you had put that in place, and then it would send it out first to a function. The function would remediate the problem and make the bucket private again. Now, this is all automatic if you set it up. And here I've just given you the schematic of the software you yourself could have written. You could have used our events, our notifications, and our functions, and you could have looked at different REST API calls that would have been involved in creating the bucket, taking the bucket from private to public, and then you could have done this yourself, but we've done it for you, and we put it in place for the common types of problems that you might have run into. So let's go ahead, and before I move forward, So here we are in my account. This is the home menu in place. You can see here you go down to identity and security. From there, you see you have Cloud Guard. We can also talk about security zones, threat intelligence, how to work with firewalls, certificates, different scanning. We're going to talk a little bit about this. Fault as well. We're going to look at, I'm going to talk to Bastion as services as well, but all these are sitting here right in your identity and security under your standard menu, under what would here be your hamburger menu. So you come to Cloud Guard. And the first thing you have is the overview. So this is just a general overview of what's going on in the tenancy. So this is actually our root as opposed to any particular compartment in place. And the reason is that is because this is a example and it's for our team, what we use. And so there's not a lot of things going on here. Of course, we have some errors that we've left for you to demonstrate. But so the first thing, you'd come down here and look at problems and hesitate a minute because it does put in place. So you can see the type of things that it can detect. And we certainly have a lot of, we really should clean up some of these critical errors or threats, if you will. So, but here it is, this bucket is public. And we can either mark it as resolved, which means, we're okay with it the way it is, or we can dismiss it, or we can do the recommendation. So it's just that straightforward. And here its problem is marked as an orphan, like Cloud Guard. So here's the different recommendations that are in place, where to implement them, the total number, things to do. You can view the problem here. You can resolve it. Threat monitoring, again, we're limited what we can actually to put in place. And then here you have the different targets we put in. We put in our root tenancy. We put in this these next couple of containers as well, compartments, excuse me, as well, to either use as a security zone or a Cloud Guard or otherwise. And here's the responder activity. And so you see that through these different scripts were put in place, you've had some worked through, they're succeeded and acted. Sometimes they're waiting for input, awaiting confirmation. So these are the types of things that you might have to address in an incremental way, but that's our fault, right? As who set it up, because this could all be done automatically as well. And here you see the responder recipes, the names. So let's look at one. So you can just go through here and enable different events or disable different events as you require. It's pretty much that straightforward. And you can clone it, and then from that position, you can change things in the clone. So you could change the compartment, you could enable or disable rules. Again, you see here's a notification versus a fix. The different activities, recipes I just showed you, some more detector recipes. It's no more than lists and clicks. And as a note, many of you are unfamiliar with OCI. OCI can be accessed not only through the UI, which I'm showing you here, but anything that you do in OCI through the UI, you can do through OCI CLI if you're more comfortable with in a terminal writing commands in that manner, or, which is more likely, that you would take a script with multiple sets of OCI CLI that you would put in place for a particular area. The other thing to remember is that every aspect of this that I've demonstrated with respect to CloudGuard is also configurable through a Terraform. So those are the types of tools that you have. Public cloud today, we've already built the hardware out. It's there. We've given you access through software-defined networks. It's up to you to take advantage of it any way that you are most comfortable to take advantage of it within the limitations of your contract and within limitations of your cost. It's truly an amazing capability that the industry has given our users in the last couple of years. Let's go back to the slides a little bit. So vulnerability scanning, this is just anomaly detection, right? Because I sort of set that up with my last little spiel about it all being software, because the other thing is underneath this, it's all REST API calls and it's audit logs and logs of logs. It's all there and it's all being transmitted in a way that you can access it. We give you the tools to do that. And of course, we've taken advantage of that to give you these different tools, such as through CloudGuard, to create different security zones. And depending upon what recipes you put in place and how you implement what I just walked you through in a very superficial manner, it gives you the ability to go through and whatever compartments you want at any level of resource to configure. So fundamentally, it's all about scanning, understanding what's going on in your virtual machines, your bare metal hosts, or your container images, anything to do with your virtual cloud NICs, anything to do with your network overall, and you can put this together to make sense for yourself. And it's all this is no cost, because all it is data that we're collecting for you underneath in your tenancy. Security zones are, again, simply a way of putting guardrails around a particular set of your data and resources. Again, it goes to the idea that it's all software. You can script it, you can put it together, and it relies on monitoring and on the REST API calls and the audit calls in place. And then it just uses standard tools like events and notifications and functions to take action based upon what you want. But it gives you the time, the ability to be beyond the instance, in the sense that you're not doing this in an emergency. You've already thought this thing through. You've already looked at the examples in place. You've already seen the best practices. You've read a couple of blogs that are out there. You've seen what we've put in place, and you've experimented with this. And therefore, then when something does happen, it's instantaneous fix. You get a notification, you go back and you see what happened, why it happened, and you get a good troubleshoot out of the process and learn for your organization for the next steps. So one of the other things we put in place is our web application firewall on our load balancers. This applies as much as anything else. This talks to our edge web application firewall. It does work on any firewall, any load balancer we have, but at the end of the day, this is really powerful with respect. It's a way of getting your policy enforcement, and it's a set of rules with a specific set of syntax. At this point, I also have to note that while this is excellent, easy to implement, perfect for you if you're in particular first time setting this up or setting this up internally, but if you've got a customer base that's in tens of thousands and you've been working with Palo Alto routers and you've got several thousand rules in place, unless you want to change all those rules that you've got on Palo Alto to our load balancer syntax for our rules, then perhaps it would be better to go to Marketplace, get a copy of the Palo Alto software, put it in a virtual machine, and set it up exactly as you've had it with all the rules that you had it in place, and do it that way. Do what's best for you for your instance and your time frame and what's going to cost. Remember, one of the key aspects of all of this is it's transferring the value from the incremental work that we all do periodically to the value that the machine can do. So the machine is now very cheap. And the key aspect is that there's your intelligence, what you put in place, your pattern recognition capabilities that's going to separate you from the machine, and your ability to use these tools in such a way that you can guarantee a better outcome for your organization, or for your organization and for your customers. But the key aspect is all these are a set of rules, set of syntax that you can now adjust. And these are just almost like you would think of templates for programs that you probably could have written yourselves, many of you. But it's just a matter of using our tools versus someone else's tools if it suits your purpose.
Lynn, I have a question for you on the web access firewall right now. Or you or Jason, can both of you comment on this, right? I know web access firewall has been very popular in recent days for web traffic and everything, right? But I think there is a certain amount of limitations on, it protects only a certain type of traffic. Is there any sort of Jason, if you want to comment on any sort of outside of the web traffic, is there anything at the internet at edge we want to protect it? And is there anything which you want to convey from your customer experience to protect at the internet at edge? WAF only protects the HTTP traffic, but what are the other things, if there is any other communication or any other type of traffic which you want to protect at internet at edge?
That's a good one. And I had a customer call on this not too long ago. I think the best way I summarized this in the call was, you're going to want to use the WAF when you want to protect what's going on for the API calls to your application at a web layer, right? You're worried about SQL injection errors. You're worried about them misusing your APIs in a way they weren't intended. But that doesn't preclude you from not using other services with the WAF. And that could be things like our new network service firewall, which is backed by Palo Alto, where you could take the network service firewall and the WAF together. So you let the WAF secure your APIs, and you let the network firewall take care of more of your network layer attacks. Whether that's trying to fend off a bot attack, or maybe there's a geo region that you don't want your application to be accessed from, or maybe you're just trying to do simple port based or denial service based attacks. So depending on how you're trying to protect your workload, you may use WAF, but you may also add additional tools in there if there's network layer threats or functionality you're looking to get out of how to protect your workload from the internet, based malicious attacks.
I don't have anything to add to that.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you. Lynn, back to you, Lynn.
All right. So the other thing is how it works. It's pattern recognition in a lot of respects, and rules that you put in place. So as noted by Jason, if you want to restrict a particular geolocation, you can do that. That's a pretty big stick, but you can also restrict it to specific IP addresses, going to specific IP addresses inside. You can whitelist in effect. You can also limit what goes out. So you have access control, you have bot management, you can take a look at what's a good bot versus a bad bot. All this is already in there for you, by the way. It's just a matter of turning things on or off and having it recognize what is good versus bad. And a lot of this is just machine learning, pattern recognition tools that are in place, right? So it just does it, the machine does it based upon recipes that you've put in place and we've put in place, and levels of control that we've written the software for you, and you just have to turn it on. If you keep everything inside, if you're only talking between your data center And inside your data center, you probably don't need a lot of this, right? But if you've got customers and clients and salesmen out wandering about the world that need to talk back and let you guys know what's going, your inventory folks know what's going on, then you might consider this. And a lot of it is automatic, right? So denial of service attack in particular is an automatic feature of the system. The other thing we've added is open source certificates. It's automated, integrated certificate management and renewal, and it supports all the different requirements so that you get a high level of compliance with any number of rule-based systems out there that your security professionals are likely to want. And again, it's implemented through CloudGuard and through the security zones as a layer of protections. And then the other thing I do want to call out, it's not new, but it's probably within the last 18 months or all, we've created a Bastion as a service, and it's an ephemeral on-demand jump host. So if you've ever created a Bastion in the past, you typically would have a virtual machine that was accessible through a specific set of IP addresses, again, whitelisted up front, that or through a URL that you had put in place that nobody knew about, and then you would through that Bastion, you would go and talk to your network, you'd control your load balancer, you talk to your backend servers, perhaps you talk to your database, either for patching or for managing the tables. Anything that would require another level of security that you wouldn't have, likewise object storage for backing up your database perhaps. So whatever that would require a jump host in place, we now provide this as a service, and it's now no longer a virtual machine. It's a ephemeral container that's turned on based upon a couple of items it's going to ask you for: where you're coming from, where you want to go to, what secure subnet do you want to have access to. Fairly straightforward to put in place, and you can write a script for it if you want to, so it can be very fast, very quickly implemented, and you can specify any length of time up to 2 hours for you to have access to. If you don't turn it off, it will turn itself off after 2 hours, and it's just that. So if someone in the past, you had created a jump server, the typical thing, someone leaves, they're not taken off the list, not that they're ever going to do anything malicious, but it's still a security hole that you would want to not have, especially given your security team and your internal requirements, as well as compliance. You don't want to be audited with something like that happening. So we've got a lot of information for you with respect to training and certification that's available. Hands-on lab. We have a core lab, and we always have to encourage you to take a look at autonomous database labs. Let me also point out that right now we have free certification for any OCI based training right now between 1st of June and the end of August. So you can have all our Oracle Cloud, our database management tools. And some of these trainings are like 50 hours worth of classroom instruction. So it's, not bad. And you don't have to take the test. You can go through and if you will, audit it, get the information you need, and note it for the future. But it gives you a great deal of access. Database management includes our fleet management capability, so that a lot of our tools now are available across an entire organization, whether it be in somebody else's cloud, on premise, in our cloud. A lot of those tools are available for you. And then we also have methods for looking at cloud applications as well. So all these things are now free till the end of August, and your time frame to even get the tests done. So the other
Lynn,
point
I would like to add something to this is that, yeah, you can pick 2 foundation level certifications and 2 professional level certifications in between these 3 categories, OCI, database, and cloud applications. The best part is they also have live sessions that you can register for, and it's all between beginning of June and end of August.
Thank you. She read the fine print. So that's good. Good. Thank you very much, Renu, because I had not known the limitations on there. So appreciate that addition. With that, I'm going to turn it over. Have we not answered all the questions at this point?
Let's look at the questions. Yeah, there are 3 questions which have not been answered. So maybe we can take those live.
Okay, the first one is not really a question. Oh,
it's just a comment.
Yeah. So, and then a K, and then a Oracle support team can only give a range of dates. I don't have the full list of this context.
Exactly. Yeah, it's something to do with the Oracle support team, and unless we know the specific details of the case, it'll be tough for us to comment on that.
Yeah, for that one, Boris, I'm guessing that there's probably some history with that one, probably some frustration too. In the context of today's, I don't know we're going to be able to fix that one. That is a good one that you should be getting a hold of your account team, like your ECA, which is kind of my role with other customers, and asking them to help dig in with you on that topic to get it resolved.
Cool. Vijay has a question about live sessions. This is for the free Oracle University certification program that they have rolled out between June and August. So if you are signing up for any of those certification classes or programs, there is a live session also attached to that. I'll put the link in the chat window, and you can go and look at the details there.
I'll take the one on, would you consider adding WAF and API gateway? Yeah, it's done a little bit differently than it's done on AWS, which is how I read that one, because I think I know the pattern. If that is an AWS related, comparison, you would add, the WAF to potentially something like a load balancer, right? So for an API, pattern wise, it'd be like API gateway pointing to a load balancer that has WAF enabled, and the load balancer might point to a set of containerized applications or a set of functions or web servers provided the API, but the WAF is kind of in the middle, like I wouldn't call it a WAF sandwich, but it is in the middle of that flow.
You see the next question? You want an approval workflow?
There is, and Robin, I don't know if I caught the context on it from a previous question, but there is a workflow service that'll be coming out later this year. It was announced in Cloud World last year, but I think it's been delayed to the last half of the year. And the workflow is going to be kind of a generic service to do lots of things. And it's going to have a very canvas-like approach. If you've ever used Microsoft Visio, it looks like that, where you can drag and drop actions, boxes, notifications, alerts, approvals, all kinds of things, but that is something end of the year. And if I missed the question entirely, please give me a different one. Workflow to enable Bastion. Yes, you could probably use the workflow to enable Bastion sessions, because the workflow is going to be extensible so that you can run scripts. Do I know of a script today out of a box that can do that? No, but because it's all API based, you could make calls to request a session, have the approval process when it's available, approve it, and then it would spin up. That's a good question.
And I guess I would point to the fact that we do have an API gateway. We do have a process management through, you could, again, this is a stretch. You'd have to put different things together for yourself in this way. I was sort of thinking something like DevOps. Again, many of these services that we have in place here are based upon open source. You're not charged for the service, even though we provide it for you. It's simply a methodology of of creating a project, for example, here, and in the process of doing that, you get a repository, you get a connection, you get different ways of keeping track of artifacts. Essentially, this is just GitHub with Jenkins. So, but it gives you a method of looking at things that perhaps you might otherwise had not put together, if you will. So that's one aspect. Then the other thing, you can look at content management for version control as well. You can look at artifact registry, which is simply using some of the tools that are available for containers, for a registry and container registry, but to use them for any artifact. So again, you can generalize this in a lot of respects.
And Neil, I see you got a question on IDCS and IAM integration failed. I don't understand the context on that, but IDCS and IAM are being converged into what's called identity domains. And I believe that rollout's kind of going through the summertime. No such thing that I'm aware of, like an old Gen 2 tenancy. If you're on, what's just basically called OCI now, Gen 2 is probably a good label for it as well. That rollout should be eventually coming around to your tenancy. If you want to know more about the date, again, that comes back to your Oracle account team, your OCI account team, and see if they can look up when that convergence is supposed to happen. I have several customers that still haven't seen that convergence get applied to their tenancy yet. So that is something that's being rolled out. And a link to free tier, I'll post that in there. Free tier is a really good service. I think it changes how much money you get, but $300-400 is oftentimes what you get. Renew, looks like you beat me to that. Thank you.
Actually, it's for free certification. I'm putting the link again. Actually, it's in chat. If you can go.
Yeah, good one. Yeah, thank you.
Take the link from there.
For the using of the Palo Alto example from Marketplace, they would have to set it up as a virtual machine, and again, put the Palo Alto software in place, and then connect it to your virtual cloud network and implement it as part of the network firewall. So it wouldn't be part of the service. It would be an addition to that, and you could actually use it as multiple levels of screening, if you will. For example, for new customers or for customers that for the the geolocation features of traffic management, all that could be done prior to hitting the Palo Alto, which would then control the very specific IP addresses that are typically or URLs that would typically be involved into that type of a situation.
Yeah. And I'd also say, between the two, our OCA native firewall service is going to be a lot easier to manage. It's going to be a lot less overhead. But if you're used to having all the bells and whistles and knobs to turn in a Palo Alto firewall, some of those are going to be obscured as part of us managing the service for you. So you kind of identify, does it give you enough control for what you guys need to do on a day-to-day basis?
Okay, last question, and then we have to wrap up because we're already.
Robin's comment is straight on. I think she's got it. Yes, there are commercial Bastion services out there. Again, it comes to how much control you need for your operation controls versus how much you're willing to give up to not have the operational overhead. An operational overhead is day-to-day management and the patches and the upgrades. How much do you want to give up to just have a service like the Bastion service do it for you? It's a solid comment, though.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Anand, Lynn, and Jason, for this wonderful session. Really appreciate your time and your willingness to help with all the questions that we had, even though we went late over time. I hope everyone learned something today and enjoyed the session as well. It's time for 2 quick polls. You have it right on the screen there. Please remember that your feedback is really important for us, and we use your feedback for continuous improvement of our sessions. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this, where 10 is most likely and 0 is not at all? And then there is another poll after this. If you scroll down on what kind of topics you would like us to cover in the series, select the topics you're most interested in so that we can plan our remaining sessions for the year based on your feedback. And thanks again for joining. Look forward to see you again on May 20th. please register for that session if you want to learn about database services and tools available in Oracle Cloud. I'll put a link here. You can find the details for that session here. And we are adding more sessions, even though you don't see them on the page right now. We will be adding those sessions in a week or two. So you'll see many more sessions throughout the end of this year. So the first link is that page for Day 1 and Beyond session. The second link is if you have any questions, you feel free to email us. With that, I also want to share information on our next hands-on session. And the link for that is, I should be able to copy that for you. That's the link for the hands-on session. This workshop is on Tuesday, June 13th at 10 a.m. PT, same time. Register for this session. It's called Building an App from a Spreadsheet Using Oracle Apex Workshop. So if you're interested in learning about low-code app development, then you can join this workshop. In here, you'll create a fully featured responsive web app using Oracle Apex on Oracle Cloud. So that was a lot of information. Please copy and paste those links, and probably you should favorite two links. One is Day 1 and Beyond page. The other one is the hands-on page. So with that, thank you again for joining us, and see you all next time. Have a great day, everyone.